my goodness. Oh my goodness. Hold on. Wait a second. Here it comes.
Hey, safe to say I'm the biggest, the largest.
Welcome
Been
back.
Since my mama stayed in them apartments.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Free Refill with none other than Philip White in the cut. We're back. Week 3 is nearly in the books. We have Monday Night Football, the preview, which we'll be doing at the end, and then grading how everybody did this week. We had crazy special teams. We had a crazy comeback between two unbeaten teams. And we have 6 teams right now unbeaten at 3-0, and that is what we have to talk about today. First of all, if you're watching, appreciate that you've been here. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope Monday didn't suck so much because Mondays can be brutal. I'm like Garfield on Mondays. I hate them, but I still love lasagna. That's all that matters. We're about to get into grading all the teams from this previous week. Obviously, we can't do Detroit, Baltimore, but I will be giving my preview of that game. We'll be able to round it out easy and quick in a simple 45 minutes. That's what I'm going to shoot for. I'm going to shoot for roughly 45 minutes on this one. I don't think I got to go too crazy. Feel free if you got any other questions you want to ask me. Come on. You can ask them. We're friends here. I'm your best friend if you really think about it. Let's get into it. I have now also, let me see if it's set up. I have devised a new brackets. We got A+, A, B, C, D, F. We have 2 new categories. We have the ultimate winner, if there's another better name, like if you got a better name. But it's 100% bottom's got to be the ultimate stinker. Which we got to find out who was the best, who was the worst, and where does everybody stack up, how they played in week number 3 of the National Football League. That's who we're grading. That's who we're going to run it through. And let's start with a little rewind. I want to rewind back to Thursday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Let's start with the winner of that game being the Buffalo Bills. Ultimately, I think a lot of people would have been shocked that Buffalo didn't blow them out. Buffalo would have been the expected, they're going to squash Miami. Miami's been awful the first 2 weeks, especially against Indianapolis and what happened in week 1. But I'll give Miami some credit. They actually looked like a team that was playing for their head coach. It didn't look like a coach that was completely hated and wanted out of there. They had a little bit of pride. They stuck it to the Bills. They had a great opening drive. They kept it pretty close pretty much the entirety of the game. If it wasn't for one turnover at the end, Miami could have maybe taken that thing to overtime. Could have been a much closer affair. At the end of the day, the way it stands, the Bills did what they need to do. They're not an A+. They're not the ultimate winners. But they played very well. They played very well against a division rival that was desperate for a win. And they still won by 10 points. They came up with an opportune turnover at the right time. And the interesting thing to note about this game, this was the first time in Josh Allen's career where he did not complete a pass of 10 or more air yards. So Miami was clearly focused on taking away the deep ball. They were focused on taking away what they believed was the top priority. And they were able to do that, and yet they still allowed 31 points. So I think it shows just a couple things. I think it shows how good Josh Allen is as a quarterback. I think it shows how fundamentally the Bills, as much as they do rely on Josh Allen, they can clearly move the ball in other ways and other different metrics. I want to give a lot of credit to the Buffalo Bills for winning. And Miami, to be honest, that was I give it a B. That's probably the highest grade you could possibly give to a loss. I don't think the offense was as atrocious as people really are claiming that it was. I know Tua's passing numbers were not nearly gaudy, but when they had somewhat of a running game. They were able to be a little bit better through the use of Devon Achane. You still don't have the same deep ball ability that you want from Tyreek Hill. But they were still in the game up until the very end. And I think there's going to be a lot of knock on Tua. It has not been a good start to the season for him. It has not been a good start to the season to Miami. The way they played at the very least, you got to hope some of those things are going to stick. You got to hope defensively they're going to stick. Those things are going to stick. You got to hope offensively that they can continue some sort of offensive production. Because if you can compete with the Bills in a close game, then you should be able to compete with other teams that are lower stature. And the reality is, Miami lost to New England, but the other two teams are also unbeaten. So it could end up being that maybe Miami just got a little unlucky with Indianapolis and Buffalo in the early start of their schedule, but that Thursday night was a good step in the right direction for the Miami Dolphins. Now, next on the list, let's get an F in there. Let's get a team that we know failed this week. Unbelievable. Complete and utter failure. That was a mess. Okay? I do not want to hear the people say that Jake Browning can hold the Bengals ship. He can't. He won't be able to. It's basically impossible. I don't buy in that Jake Browning is going to be able to hold the ship for a month, much less 3 months. And we just saw it against Minnesota. That, again, it wasn't like Minnesota had their starter either. J.J. McCarthy was out. They had Carson Wentz in. And goodness gracious, what a mess. What a mess. What an unbelievable mess for the Cincinnati Bengals to lose, 48-10. They lost 48-10 to another backup quarterback. Defense is good. I don't care. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I really do not care that the defense, that you're playing a tough defense. Chase Brown looked appalling. He's got over 40, I think he's among qualified backs. He's got like 40 rushes. He's averaging 2 yards a carry. That's gross. That is not good offensive production from a guy that was actually a splash player for them last year, kind of came out of nowhere. Jake Browning's not going to be able to hold this ship's water. This ship is going to crash. This ship is going to board. I don't think it was the worst performance of this weekend, but it was very bad. It was very much not good. It was worse to see, but in my opinion, that is not the worst performance. Minnesota, though, you got to give them credit. They might be the ultimate. I got to think, though. I got to really think who had ultimately the best overall performance. It could be them. It could be them, or it could be Detroit or Baltimore tonight. We'll see. But I really think out of all the teams, yeah, you know what? Let's do it early. I think Minnesota had the best performance. You have one player on defense scoring 2 defensive touchdowns, and your offense still puts up an additional 30 points. That's a dominant performance. I understand it's against a backup quarterback. I believe it was the widest margin of victory. I think it was 38. I don't think anybody had a wider margin of victory than 38. Seattle came close, not close enough. And again, I mean, that was a team that was 2-0. You needed a win. You had your backup quarterback. No Aaron Jones. Jordan Mason did what he needed to do. He was good enough in that role. Minnesota will still be good. Like, even somehow, like, I don't think Carson Wentz will have the Sam Darnold type of production. I don't think that he's going to have, like, the Sam Darnold production that we saw from last year from another estranged backup quarterback. But I'm going to give Minnesota credit. They still have a roster. They're not going to go away. And they did that by being the ultimate winner. It's such a bad name. There's got to be something better than the ultimate winner. We'll just do... What's the opposite of, like, stink? Like, if you, like, that's the thing. Another thing about this, interesting. If you smell bad, like, you stink. But if you smell good, like, what's the opposite of stink? What is the opposite of, like, a stench or a bad odor? Like, you just say, oh, you smell good. Or, like, when you, like, smell bad, it's like, oh, you stink. But you don't really have a word for just smelling good other than smelling good. As far as I know. I don't know for sure, but... Minnesota, though, gets the top spot. They dominated. That's the point of the story there. Let's switch it over to another 1 o'clock game. Oh, the big game. The game that I said was going to be great, and it was the Rams and the Eagles. Now, the Eagles, to me, get a B. Because you played an excellent second half, but you played a god-awful first half. And I got to give credit. They won, right? But I think the reality is, and actually, you know what? Now that I say that, Miami probably has to fall a little bit because I don't think that they performed at the same level. I think Miami actually, you could even argue Miami performed overall throughout the entire game a little better, but that's besides the point. Philadelphia played an excellent second half. They realized, hey, we have one of the best wide receiver duos in football. Why don't we try throwing to them? And it worked. It just simply worked against that defense. The Rams corners, they really, And then especially in the first half, that defense was dominating. That defense was generating a pass rush, and I'm surprised that it kind of went away in the second half, especially with Lane Johnson being out of the game. I'm surprised that the Philadelphia Eagles were still able to continue to protect, and I'll give Jalen Hurts enough time to be able to let the ball rip. Jalen Hurts reminded everybody that he does have an arm. He reminded me that he has an arm. I kind of forgot because he wasn't really using it the last couple of weeks, but he reminded me that he's he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, 100%. And A.J. Brown just was mean mugging. He reminded me that he existed too. About time, Arthur Juan. But I can't give them a full A because that was not a good start to that game. It looked atrocious at times. And I think if the Rams were able to capitalize a little bit, which is why the Rams, I'm going to give them probably a C. They still played, again, they played a very good first half. But if they had capitalized, instead of just settling for field goals, they had a really bad penalty when they punched into the end zone. I want to say, I'm not sure if it was Corum or Kyron Williams, but they punched in the end zone and they get a penalty on an illegal block. That wasn't good. Special teams collapsed late. They very much could have walked out of there with a huge win and been 3-0. That's not the case. I still really much like the Rams. I still think they're a top 10 team. I think losing in Philly doesn't really change that for me too much. I think if they lose again, then yeah, that could change, but I still feel very high on the Rams despite their loss. I think they're gonna still be a good team moving forward. But that was brutal. To allow that to happen back to back special teams plays, your special teams are gonna be running sprints this weekend, this whole week really, rather. But your special teams is gonna be they're gonna get run over. They're gonna get talked about. Because that's just ridiculous. Also, I didn't mention this at the beginning, special guest Chris McClain taking tap spot once again. Well, this is always a Phil thing, but it's Chris McClain. If you don't watch Total Drama, then watch it. It was a very fun cartoon. It's got some pretty funny stuff in there. Moving on to the who do I want to go next? Let's go Tampa. Tampa kind of felt the same way as Philly. Because they was okay, they're going to dominate the game, right? Tampa Bay was dominating. They got a pick six from Jamel Dean. I was okay, cool. That game is over. The Jets somehow came back in this game with another crazy special teams block. We saw multiple blocked kicks returned to the house this weekend. I was it was a crazy day for special teams overall. I think Tampa still, and this is what's interesting, Tampa and Philly will face off in week 4, so that should be a good matchup as well. My main concern with Tampa in this one was that was supposed to be a game where you dominate. And in the last 3 weeks, I love Baker Mayfield. He's proven that he is a gamer, that he is the man. He's proven to be a legitimate MVP candidate through 3 weeks. But I am concerned that when you're any team that has to constantly rely on their quarterback to come up with these clutch drives, especially against teams that we don't really know if they're good. Tampa beat Atlanta week 1, Houston week 2, and the Jets week 3. Now, of course, Tampa handed them all those losses, but those teams didn't win the other 6 games they played. So, and you're only beating these teams by 1 possession or on late drives. Not to say that Tampa's bad, but at a certain point, it just doesn't feel, it feels like it's a very good, very solid team, but overall just doesn't feel like a team that's going to dominate. They could very much, Philadelphia could expose them very easily in week 4. I'll give them credit, they got the win, but they really made their fans sweat it out for that one. And the Jets, what's crazy to me is you could arguably put this on the same tier as Tampa. Because, yeah, they didn't win, but to come back when many people would have said, oh, game's over. Game is over, game is done, Jets don't have a chance in this one, and all of a sudden you're up 1 point. It was kind of really sad, though, because when you see the coach celebrating like he got the win and he 100% didn't. But, I do like that there's, that energy. Jets need some of that energy. I think Aaron Glenn at least bringing that, getting hyped like that, that's something that the Jets could at least use to fuel going forward. I would say I'll give them a little bit more credit than Miami because Miami, the difference is it never to me felt like there was a legitimate chance Miami would win. Miami competed against Buffalo, but never felt to me like there was a legitimate chance that Miami would win the game. Even as they were driving, I'm yeah, Buffalo's probably going to stop them. With the Jets, they physically had the lead late in the game. They just needed to play from their defense that they didn't get. That's what that was, and it's a darn shame. But the New York Jets are now 0-3, as are the New York Giants, who, you know what, as are the New York Giants. New York football sports, man. If you live in the west of New York, then you're really happy because go Bills. You live in the city, geez, man. It's all gloom and doom. But I will say I think the Jets have a little brighter future moving forward than the Giants. Well, I mean, the Giants will have Dart. But right now, they're playing Russell Wilson. Until they start Dart, it's not going to be that entertaining. Going into... let's go Giants-Chiefs. Let's skip around a little bit. Let's Sunday Night Football, freshest in our minds. Kansas City... Yuck, man. I mean... They... Blah. It just doesn't feel good. Like, it's a bad Giants team. Right? Like, the expectation is you have to win that game if you're Patrick Mahomes to ensure that. Because if you fell to 0-3 against an 0-2 Giants team and Russell Wilson played the way he did Sunday night, yuck. I'm going to still give it a B, though. Because I think at a certain point they did still win by double digits on the road. Tyquan Thornton actually looks like he could be useful in the pass game. Like that late catch down near the goal line that was insane. That's not an easy grab to make for any even the top receivers, much less a guy that coming into this year is realistically like 4th or 5th on the depth chart. That's impressive. Kansas City needed a win. They got it. New York was their get-right game. Russell Wilson was really bad. And speaking of Russell Wilson being really bad, it also speaks to another defense that he plays that's not very good. But as for the Giants, I think that's the bigger headline. This was Before I even talk about them, let me get back to Kansas City. Kansas City this is going to be who they are, I think. I think what's going to happen throughout the entirety of the season is that the only way they can win is if Patrick Mahomes wills them to victory. Because they have nothing else. Their offensive line is not the same. They don't have... do they have a top 20 running back on their roster? They don't. Do they even, like, right now, until Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are back, that offense is going to be just dink and dunk, little Mahomes scrambles, and maybe like an occasional deep shot to maybe Tyquan Thornton. That's it. I mean, him and Travis Kelce are just not remotely on the same page at times. Travis just is clearly not the same player at a certain point. It's nowhere near what it once was. It looks kind of deflating. It just looks deflating to watch. It does not feel like a great team. It's just wasn't good. It was bad, is what it was. Kansas City did not play well overall, in my opinion. If you play that way against like Baltimore, against Buffalo, you're probably going to get cooked. You get away with that because you're playing the Giants, and Russell Wilson was terrible. But I think ultimately you're going to end up relying on Patrick Mahomes consistently throughout the entire year, and I think there's not enough there. There's just not enough meat on the bone. Moving on to the New York Giants. This is not an F, because I think the defense had its moments and kept them in the game, but this is a D. And I think now, really, after 3 weeks, I think they're going to end up giving it one more week, but I think by week 5, 100% Jackson Dart is starting. Because what are you doing? At a certain point, Russell Wilson isn't it. Russell Wilson is not... You are 0-3. You got no business starting Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is not the same guy he once was. He was for a moment in Dallas. But you saw it against Kansas City, and you saw it week 1 against Washington. We know Dallas' defense has been bad. It just has been. It was awful against the Giants, and it's reared its ugly head again in Chicago. It made Caleb Williams... It literally was Caleb Williams' get-right game. The Dallas Cowboys defense right now is a get-right game for offenses, and Russell Wilson couldn't hold getting right, so to speak. Malik Nabers, for the first time in his career, I mean, he's got a young career, but for the first time in 20 games that he's played as a wide receiver, give or take roughly 20, had less than 4 catches. For a guy that was basically, I wouldn't say like if you're talking fantasy wise, it would be bust proof. Busted last night. It was agonizing to watch. And that's your best player. That is by far your best player. The only real positive from the Giants, at least in my opinion, offensively, was the emergence of Cam Scatterbo. And very clearly that he's starting to be the focal guy in that offense as the running back. But if I'm looking at the New York Giants today, and you're telling me Russell Wilson's still the starter going into Week 4, I'm extremely disappointed. And if he's still the starter by Week 5, honestly, I would recommend a new franchise. I'd recommend a new franchise to root for a little bit, man. Because they clearly... I understand you want to not rush Jackson Dart back out there. But at the end of the day, there's pieces there. This team looks way better offensively than maybe if you had made him start last year or 2 years ago. Right? Like, if you made him start last year, I could see maybe not, you don't know how good Malik Neighbors is going to be. You don't really have anyone else outside of that. There's no real running back. This year, they have Cam Scatterbo, who looks nice. Tyron Tracy's a good compliment. It can be a decent backfield. Andrew Thomas just got back healthy at the left tackle spot, and he looked decent on Sunday night. Malik Neighbors is a top receiver in the league when you get him the ball. Wan'Dale Robinson is proving to be a solid number 2. This offense can succeed with someone who's it's actually supposed to succeed with for the future. And you drafted Jackson Dart to be that. Brian Daboll, you want to save your job, you should be starting Dart. Russell Wilson ain't going to do it for you, and Jameis Winston is more, in my opinion, more likely to lose you games. You might be more entertaining, but it's more likely to lose you games than win you games. You need to be developing Jackson Dart. End of discussion there. Moving along. Wow, that was a mouthful. Moving along, let's do a quick one. Saints. Bad. Not the worst. And the reason why I say not the worst is because at the end of the day, I didn't expect them to be good. Right? Like, they're clearly trying. That being said, no, I think this is still an F. I think this team didn't play well. It just has no real roster. There was no pass game, right? They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't run the ball. Even on special teams, they allowed a punt return touchdown. And, it was Seattle. I can understand Seattle winning this game by, 17, 21. They won 44-13. By 17 or 21 points, not 21-17. If it was a close game, I'd be like, Seattle, what are you doing? It's the Saints. But that's, really? That's how... I understand this team is devoid of talent a little bit. It's a little lackluster, especially with no salary cap, with the poor draft classes over the years. But really? We're looking at the New Orleans Saints? And you're allowing Seattle. This isn't Buffalo. This isn't Baltimore. This isn't Philadelphia. This is Seattle. And we kind of think Seattle's kind of in the middle of the pack. You're getting blown out by middle of the pack teams. That means you are truly, truly bad. And somehow, some way, I don't even think you're the worst team that played this weekend. Somehow, some way, you lost 44-13. Bengals lose 48-10. I don't think you're the team that played the worst this weekend. We'll get into that just now, but to grade Seattle played well. I mean, you blow out a team at home, you get A+. I know it's the Saints. I know their roster's bad, but Sam Darnold played fast. He played 14-18. It was I think it was 14 of 18, 200 yards, got a touchdown pass to Jackson Smith and Jigba and said, okay, I'm done. Drew Lock finished cleanup crew. I wouldn't have expected Seattle to play cleanup crew even in this game. A game that doesn't really have... Again, it's New Orleans, we already have established, doesn't really have a good quarterback, aging veteran running back, aging defense, just not enough good defensive pieces. And even then, I didn't expect them to blow them out by this much. So, I'm going to give credit to Seattle. That's an A+. You blow out somebody at home, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do that to bad teams. You're supposed to wipe them off the floor. Ooh, kill them. But the team that gets the worst performance, and by the way, let me give credit to the team that did it to them. Carolina, you get your first A+ of the year. You shut out a team. That's hard to do. Shutting out any team in the league is just hard to do no matter how bad that team is. They shut them out 30-0. And they were outgained in yards, too. They were outgained in yards. If you look at the yardage total, how does Carolina win that game? No idea. Most of the time not always when you get outgained in yards, but when you get outgained in yards by how much they were, it's a little shocking. Carolina beat the brakes off Atlanta. Do I think that makes Carolina good? No, not really. I think it's two kind of bottom third of the league teams duking it out. One just got the better of the other. But again, Bryce Young felt a little bit more confident. The defense played well. Michael Penix couldn't do anything. And that's interesting to me because I want to give credit to Carolina, but at the end of the day, Atlanta, I'm sorry. You have too many offensive pieces to be putting up 0 points. You have Bijan Robinson. You have Drake London. You have Darnell Mooney. You have Kyle Pitts. You have Tyler Algier. You might think, that's not enough. That's plenty to not be scoring 0 points. Like, that's way too much that's way too many offensive pieces to not be scoring points. Especially against a team that, by the way, has been terrible for roughly the last at least 7 years. A dreadful